Hi, my name is Kim Newcomer. I'm with Ramona Star's 4-H Sewing. Today you are going to make a wallet. These are called the Wonder Wallets. It has a button. You'll learn how to sew on a button. You'll incorporate a loop, and then there's 2 layers inside, an outer and an inner, and that will be your wallet. You will have gotten a kit from me, or this will be the kit that you get from me, or you're going to cut out your own fabric, and you're going to cut out a piece that's 2 pieces that are 5 inches wide by 10.5 long, and 2 pieces that are 4 inches wide by 10.5 long. And then you'll also cut out a 5-inch piece of ribbon, and you'll have a button ready. So you either get a kit from me, or you just cut out and use your own scraps at home. All right, you're going to need your sewing machines. You're going to need an iron and ironing board. Take your fabric, make sure it's nice and ironed before you start sewing. Once you get your kit, you'll decide which is going to be the part that faces out. I'll show you this. Which one, sometimes you'll have 2 different fabrics for those smaller 4-inch pieces. So decide which way you want it. I'm going to have this cowboy print on the outside. So I'm going to actually take and decide, I think this is my good side, so I'm going to put my right sides together on both of these pieces of fabric. So on the 4-inch fabric and on the 5-inch wide. And I think this is the good side. So those are both the good sides together. Only tricky part on the larger piece, I'll try to line these up a little bit better. There we go. The only tricky part on the wider pieces, you need to incorporate your loop. So take your 5-inch piece of ribbon, fold it in half, and you can pin that together. So poke a needle through and come back up. Make sure the ball of the pin is facing away from the loop. And then find the middle of the side, the 5-inch side, and put your loop in the middle there. Cover it up. So you're putting the loop between the 2 pieces of fabric. And then come back in and pin on top of that. Okay? I'm going to take that other pin out because I don't need it anymore. Then you can do a very light pinning around the perimeter. I'm going to just put 1 on this side. I might put a couple along this edge. Because we're using a cotton fabric and it's not too big, it usually stays in place nicely for you. This side, I'm going to put my pins. Always place the pin heads on the outside. And I'm going to define my opening here. We have to turn this right side out when we're done. So I'm going to leave an opening that's probably about 3 inches wide. I'm going to make this a little bit wider. And that'll be where I turn it right side out. So let me stitch around. This is the 5-inch one, and it's got the loop on one end. It's on the inside. I'm going to come over here to my 3-inch opening, and I'm going to start on this end of it. I'm going to sew all the way around and stop here, leaving that 3-inch opening. I'm going to do the same thing on the 4-inch. I'm going to have my opening defined here. A 3-inch opening on one side. I'm going to start sewing here all the way around and end here. Start a little back stitching at the beginning and at the end. Remember, when you're sewing here, you're going to sew to the end, get to where we're doing 1/2-inch seam. You're going to do a 1/2-inch seam, come to where you're about 1/2 inch from the end, put your needle in, turn the fabric, stitch, needle in, turn the fabric. You know the drill, right? Okay, so let us sew this. All right, we're going to start at the far end of our opening. I'm going to line this up on a 1/2 inch. I've got a mark on my sewing machine. Make sure you know where a 1/2 inch is. I'm going to put my needle down by hand, take out my pin, and begin sewing around the perimeter. After I put my pressure foot down, final edge, I'm going to stop and leave myself an opening, right? Take out my pin, stitch up to that, back stitch. There we are. So I've left an opening here for turning. That was a 4-inch piece. Now I'm going to do the 5-inch piece. I'm going to leave this part open. Start here with a 1/2-inch seam. Drop my needle, take out the pin. Do the back stitching. And then remember to leave that gap. So as you approach that gap on the far side, just do a little back stitching. And there you've got your 2 parts with the opening on both of them. So I'm just going to trim up these threads. All right, now I've got both of them sewn. I'm going to trim the corners because then it's not so bulky when you turn it right side out. I'm going to trim a diagonal, missing the stitches, of course. Getting close, but missing them. I'll do that for the 4-inch piece and the 5-inch piece. And then I'm going to turn these right side out. So I will just do it with my hands to begin with. You can see where the loop is. It's exciting. And then I'll use a bodkin. You can use a chopstick. There's all kinds of alternative things you can use. Just something that will not cut your fabric, but can go in there and pooch those corners out. Make them look nice and crisp. I also like to run my bodkin along the seam. And it helps it when I iron, to iron it all the way open. All right. There we go. So I've got it folded open now, and I will iron that. Let me open this one first, and we'll go over to the ironing board and iron these really quickly. So make sure you push all the way out to the corners. It'll look nice and crisp. Some of you will have 2 pieces of fabric that are the same, some of you will have 2 that are different, and you've got to decide which one you want to have on the outside of your wallet or on the inside surface. So now I'm just going to grab this and try to roll it and finger press it first. Roll that edge in. Got a few loose threads. Just finger press it. And then I'm going to go and iron them. Okay. There we are. Okay, so we've got them nice and flat. Get rid of my scraps. And I'm going to sew mine together this way instead of this way. I'm going to sew them so the cowboys show on the inside of the wallet. Before we sew this piece on to the outer part, we need to put on our button because the button is going to get sewn onto that outer piece, just like the loop is here. So you're going to go grab a measuring tape and measure in about 1 inch. And that's where you're going to place your button, in the middle of the side. And then take some thread, double the thread, tie a knot in the end, and then stitch on your button. Some of you may have shank buttons, which means you just do a loop through the shank. Others will have a button that has holes in it, and you will have to decide how you're going to sew on your button. If I could find the hole for the button, it would be good. All right, so to sew on this button, I am going to press it in. And this time I'm going to do parallel lines. You notice on this one I did cross lines, but on this one I'm going to do parallel. And you can decide which way you want it. Just make sure you always go up and down in the right holes. And I would say up and down, 4 times per side is plenty. Finish it off, look between the fabric and the button and bring your needle up between the two, like that. If you have a shank button, you don't have to do this. And then I go around a couple of times, come back to that spot where it came up, push my needle through, come back to the back side here, and then make a knot. Just hold it, put your needle in, pull, put your finger on top of that, and make that loop. Make the loop, put the needle in, put your finger on that spot where they crossed, and you've got a knot. Turn that off. And there's your button. What you're going to do now is you're going to make the pocket. So you're going to take this is the outside of your wallet. It's got the button and the loop. Flip it over and take your inner piece, that 4-inch piece that we've sewn together. Both of the bottoms should be down at the bottom here. If they're not, it's not a crisis. Actually, mine is not, and that is a crisis. So my opening is here at the top because I wanted this direction. So I'm going to make a stitch all the way across this upper edge of this inner piece, and that will close that opening. So let me just take a moment and do that. If it was on the bottom, I wouldn't have to do that because it would get closed up. Trim off my threads, and now I close that little opening up at the top. All right, so now I'm ready to go. I have the inside of the wallet, the button's over here. It's away from the edge far enough so I'm going to be able to stitch over here. I'm going to lay the right side of my inner on top. Notice how my opening for my lower pocket is down here. I'm going to sew that closed when I sew all the way around. And then I'm going to pin these together, just a couple of pins around the perimeter, just to hold it in place as I'm stitching. And now I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to stitch all the way around the wallet. The last thing we're going to do is stitch that inner part, but let's first stitch all the way around the wallet. I'm going to go to my sewing machine. We're going to do a very small seam, so you can be about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, maybe a little bulky at the beginning. Stitch a little further away, back up, and then do that about 1/8 of an inch seam around the perimeter. You're really sewing the bottom together. And then you get that corner, do a little back stitching. Pull it out and trim off your threads. So now we've sewn all the way around the perimeter. And the last thing we have to do is divide the wallet. So take your wallet, fold it in half, and then take a pin and place a pin in the center just to mark where you're going to be. So that's where my center is. And you're going to stitch from the top all the way to the bottom. So I'll take my pin out, kind of mark where I need to be. That's where I want to be. I'll drop my needle in, my pin out, do a little back stitching at the beginning, and stitch straight down. A little back stitching at the bottom. Trim off your extra threads. That was nice with this white thread so you could really see it. So there's the outside of the wallet, the inside of the wallet. It's divided. You've got nice little pockets. And when you close it, you can whip your ribbon around that button. And there's your wallet. So enjoy your Wonder Wallet project.